Well, good evening, everyone. And, of course, welcome back. Yes, to another very exciting episode of Red Pill News Live. Hope you guys are having a lovely day. I want to address a comment over on YouTube from somebody who thinks that President Trump is a genocidal murderer. Let me be the first to tell you, well, you in the audience already know, President Trump has done more than any single person in modern history to forego death and destruction. He has ended 7, 8 conflicts all around the world, currently in the midst of bringing a resolution to the war between Russia and Ukraine. Stupid. Or if you're disingenuous, I don't know what the problem is, but if you truly believe that President Trump is a genocidal murderer, I invite you to send me the evidence. Please, please, if you will. Oh my God, that's hilarious. Oh, you're still there. The vaccine has murdered millions. The vaccine has murdered millions. Well, that is a nuanced issue, and we've talked about that on so many different occasions. People who were going to take the vaccine were going to take the vaccine. People who didn't take the vaccine weren't going to take the vaccine. All right, so I need you to sit back, relax, and then grab your popcorn, because we're going to be right back after this. Now, I'm sure you guys have probably heard all of the news about these miracle weight loss shots, but the troubling issue is that 2026 data has now officially revealed what should probably be a wake-up call for the people taking those shots. There was a major analysis that was done, and it revealed that once people stop taking these injections, they end up regaining about 60% of the weight they lost within that first year. And what's even worse about it is that most of the weight they gain back is actually pure fat. That's right, the muscle they lose stays gone because it leaves them with a crashed metabolism and a body that's functionally a lot older than when they started. This is why I'm pretty obsessed with today's new sponsor. It's called GLP-1 Elevate. Instead of using needles to override my system, it uses clinically studied, plant-based ingredients like metabolite to help my body naturally boost its own hunger control signals. You end up getting that same fullness and fewer cravings, but without all of the scary side effects or the metabolic rebound. It supports my goals while protecting my muscles so I can actually keep the results for good. So to celebrate Valentine's Day and the year we have ahead, you can right now get 50% off with GLP-1 Elevate at trimwithredpill.com. Every single order comes with a complete support bundle with free VIP coaching for life, a 60-day money-back guarantee, and free express shipping on subscriptions. So head on over to the link in the description below, trimwithredpill.com right now, to claim your 50% discount before it expires. And when you support my sponsors, you support this channel. All right, guys, I don't know what the hell happened with the audio right there. It just like zoomed out of control for just a moment. Well, either way, we have a lot to discuss today, and we are going to open with a video that I'm sure is going to bring a smile to many people's faces. You know, much ado was made about Rosie O'Donnell leaving the United States because she was worried that President Trump was going to put people in concentration camps or something along those lines. But either way, what we have here is a person who is a leftist. They left the United States. They fled to Canada. And like many people just like her, they didn't bother to look into the laws that are in place in foreign nations. I mean, unlike the United States, you couldn't just show up as a foreigner and demand that they paid all of your bills and you wouldn't be able to just get a job. No, they have rules and regulations, actually, as we do here in the United States, too. But as you all know, a very different paradigm has been playing out. So let's take a look. This is someone who is begging the citizens of Canada to take pity on her because she is unable to pay her bills. She doesn't have the proper visa to allow her to work. And obviously, the cost of living is a lot higher in Canada.
I'm a scholar of the far right who has fled the United States to Canada, and I need help. The situation in Canada is absolutely dire. For Americans who don't know, the housing crisis here is worse than in the United States. I lived in LA for 6 years, and I have not faced rent as bad as here. When my partner, our cat, and our dog fled the United States, we headed north with the goal of being close to where our families are located, which is on the West Coast. So we are now in British Columbia. More specifically, we are in the Sea to Sky Highway in the Greater Vancouver area. We are attempting to find housing in the western side of this region. My partner and I are here on a visitor visa, which is a 6 months possible stay for Americans. But while you're here on a visitor visa, you can't work. So we are currently surviving off of what savings we could get together before we fled the United States. And that's not terribly much. And in Canada, I think it's actually the cost of living crisis is worse here, especially when you are shut out of the healthcare system, when you can't access any of the resources that Canadians have access to.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
And that's understandable. You know, I'm not a citizen of the country, but it is making the financial situation dire because we can't work. Because there are 2 adults, a cat and a dog, we are looking for more than a room, but 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom for free or below market rates. And I know that's a huge ask, but that's what we need. Canadians have been asking where I'm located and what I need because y'all are such lovely human beings. This is the ask. If you could
Free or below market rates.
help me by interacting, reposting this video, I would very much appreciate it to get this out there. As horrified as I am to be revealing my location, because I'm trying to find a way to get us housing. So if you are on Vancouver Island, if you are in the Vancouver or Surrey area, with a 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, let us know. We can pay rent, but it would probably have to be below market rate. Please let me know if that's possible. You can leave a comment and I'll get in touch with you, or DM me. I will be checking my messages regularly. I will be paying very close attention to this post. If we can't find housing, we're going to have to leave, and I don't know where we'll go. So I hope that this works. Thank you.
Seeing as you're a citizen of the United States, you can just come back to the United States. I guarantee you, no one is going to be putting your life at risk as long as you're not out, I guess, on the streets of Portland protesting ICE and stepping over that thin blue line. All right. Now, also over the weekend, what was wonderful to see is that the U.S. hockey team beat Canada and, in fact, took home the gold. And the reply from the White House was absolutely hilarious. Last year, February of last year, Justin Trudeau tweeted to President Trump, "You can't take our country and you can't take our game," speaking about Canada. Well, after the U.S. beat Canada in the championship Olympic Games for hockey, the White House posted this picture of a bald eagle taking down a Canadian goose. And I just about died laughing when I saw this. I really don't care that much about sports, but of course I had to show you guys this because I literally burst out laughing when I saw this. All right. Now, also, as a follow-up on something that I talked about last week, President Trump's executive order with regards to phosphates and with regard to glyphosate. Now, many people, as you probably remember, were presenting that executive order as if President Trump had granted blanket immunity to the makers of glyphosate, meaning they have a whole bunch of lawsuits based upon the dangerous nature of glyphosate. Many people have developed cancer after working with it for sustained periods of time. Secretary Kennedy from Health and Human Services, of course, who has detailed knowledge about this, also wanted to speak out, and he said, "I will always tell the American people the truth." What's interesting is he echoes exactly what I said the other day about the use of herbicides and what would happen if we were to immediately stop their usage. He says pesticides and herbicides are toxic by design. engineered to kill living organisms. When we apply them across millions of acres and allow them into our food system, we are putting Americans at risk. Chemical manufacturers have tens of billions of dollars to settle cancer claims linked to their products, and many agricultural communities report elevated cancer rates and chronic disease. Unfortunately, our agricultural system depends heavily on these chemicals. The U.S. represents 4% of the world's population, yet we use roughly 25% of its pesticides. So if these inputs disappeared overnight, crop yields would fail, food prices would surge, and America would experience a massive loss of farms, even beyond what we are witnessing today. The consequences would be disastrous. I support President Trump's executive order to bring agricultural chemical production back to the United States. That would end our near total reliance on adversarial nations. His executive order protects two pillars of national strength: our defense readiness and our food supply. When hostile actors control critical inputs, they directly threaten the security of the American people. The Trump administration will secure these supply chains to eliminate that vulnerability. President Trump did not build our current system. He inherited it. For decades, Washington designed modern agriculture. Policymakers wrote farm policy, directed research dollars, structured subsidies and crop insurance, and shaped commodity markets to reward monocultures and maximum yield. Those deliberate choices locked farmers into chemical dependence and prioritized short-term input over long-term soil viability and human health. We are now changing course without destabilizing the food supply. Alongside USDA Secretary Rollins, we are accelerating the transition to regenerative agriculture by expanding farming systems that rebuild soil, increase biodiversity, improve water retention, and reduce reliance on synthetic chemicals, including pre-harvest desiccation. We are also driving the rapid adoption of next-generation technologies, including laser-guided weed control, electrothermal and electrical systems, robotics, precision mechanical cultivation, and biological controls that reduce blanket spraying with precision intervention. These solutions are not theoretical. Farmers are already putting them to work. Markets are scaling them. Now the federal government will act with urgency to expand upon their reach and accelerate adoption nationwide. I have met with hundreds of farmers and agricultural leaders across the country. They understand the pressures firsthand. Chemical inputs cut into margins. Chemical-resistant pests are spreading. Soil health is declining. Foreign markets are shutting out American produce. Farmers want workable alternatives, and they want policies that support transition without threatening their livelihoods. At Health and Human Services, I am leading a coordinated effort grounded in gold standard science. I am working with Secretary Rollins and EPA Lee Zeldin to expedite a better future with a thriving agricultural system that is less dependent on harmful chemicals. We are sharing data, coordinating strategy, and supporting farmers through a practical transition. The Make America Healthy Again agenda forces us to challenge long-standing assumptions about how we grow food, structure markets, and measure success in this country. Reform at this scale will test entrenched interests, and it will not move in a straight line. President Trump has opened the door to this debate and backed meaningful change, not only in policy, but in the national conversation about health and agriculture. American farmers stand at the center of this movement. They deserve policies rooted in rigorous science and economic reality. Our children deserve a food system that protects and strengthens their health. With President Trump's leadership, we are securing critical supply chains, confronting the health risks embedded in our current system, and deploying every available tool to build a stronger, safer, and more resilient American food supply. So, very well put there. President Trump has Robert F. Kennedy Jr. working on this issue. We can't simply stop using these insecticides and herbicides overnight. It will decimate the food supply. People will starve. The American farming system will collapse, and a whole bunch of people will go out of business. But if we can phase in solutions that are going to allow us to wean ourselves off of these chemical and synthetic additives, then we can go ahead and get rid of them for good. It's just not the kind of thing that we can do overnight. Absolutely love to see this. Now, I need to say thank you to Sabrado, who says, my dad is Canadian, and they used to offer citizens of the United States dual citizenship when I was young. When I got there, their economy was horrible. They said no, packed my shit, and came home. And then Sean Anon, good to see you, buddy. Drop in sent 3 cookies. I appreciate you very much, man. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, and real quickly, before we check in with another member of the cabinet, I do have another brief message from our friends over here on Rumble. You guys, banks are not your friends. They can cancel your accounts. They can freeze your cards. They can decide what you're allowed to buy, say, and who you're allowed to support. Big banks and financial institutions have got total control over your finances, and they know it. And that's why financial independence matters right now more than ever. Hence the Rumble Wallet. It's a wallet built for real freedom. With Rumble Wallet, you control your money, not a bank, not a government, not a tech company. You can use it to buy digital assets like Tether, Tether Gold, and Bitcoin all in one secure place. You don't have to ask for permission. There's no middlemen. There's no cancel button. And when you want to support creators that you actually believe in, you can use that Rumble Wallet app to directly tip content creators securely, instantly, and without interference. There's no middlemen to take a cut off the top. It's not a credit line that they can shut off. It is your wallet. It is permanent to protect for the future and to protect for your family. So when the system fails, when institutions turn on their own people, financial sovereignty is the difference between security and vulnerability. And it should probably be mentioned that Rumble Wallet isn't about politics. It's about freedom and ownership, protecting what's yours. So take control of your finances today and download the Rumble Wallet now and step away from the big banks for good. You'll get true ownership, true protection, and true financial freedom. You can use that QR code on screen, or you can visit wallet.rumble.com, or just search for the Rumble Wallet in the App Store on your device. Thank you very much to the good people over at Rumble. WD-40 over on Pilled also says, 62 days of freedom, bro. Thanks for your help, encouragement, and example. Much love, RP. WD-40, congrats on your sobriety, brother. So glad to know that you are still sticking with it. All right, now we're going to check in with Tulsi Gabbard. The State of the Union is coming up tomorrow. Undoubtedly, President Trump is going to have plenty to say, but the Office of the Director of National Intelligence has their own State of the Union countdown. She wants to go through some of the major wins that we've had in this
President
first year.
Trump.
And let me just make this large on the screen for everybody.
President Trump has already taken historic action immediately to secure our borders in record time, and designated several cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, a move that has empowered our National Counterterrorism Center here at ODNI to deploy over 2 decades of counterterrorism expertise towards detecting and deterring cartels and gangs like never before. In just 1 year, this designation by President Trump prevented more than 10,000 individuals with direct ties to narco-terrorism from accessing our country. We work very closely with our partners at the federal, state, and local level. We've assisted them in the apprehensions of several cartel terrorists, including a Sinaloa cartel boss known as El Pato, who allegedly led a vast network of drug trafficking, extortion, kidnapping, and murder. Another example is a CJNG-affiliated baby trafficker called La Diabla, who preyed on vulnerable pregnant women in Mexico, lured them to remote areas, cut out their babies, harvested their organs, and sold these newborn babies. These are just a few examples of the progress that's been made toward ending the gang and cartel violence that's plagued the American people and put our lives at risk for far too long.
Now, this is highly relevant because right now, several areas in Mexico are directly under siege by various factions of the Jalisco New Generation cartel. And we will talk about that a little bit more in the very near future, a little bit later in the show. But Tulsi Gabbard also has a follow-up here where she goes through several of the declassification efforts that President Trump has led her to direct under the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, things that we hadn't gotten, even though it had already long since passed the time that we were supposed to.
Thanks to President Trump's leadership and his day one executive orders, we've been focused on transparency and accountability. First, declassifying over 500,000 government documents in a single year. We exposed the Russia collusion hoax, this fabricated so-called intelligence engineered by the Obama administration to orchestrate what was essentially a coup, using lawfare, manufactured investigations and impeachments and harassment, subverting the will of the American people in the deep state's attempt to delegitimize the president and the American people who elected him. I think.
All right. Now, she lists several things. 500,000 documents declassified in a year alone. That includes JFK documents, RFK documents, MLK documents, Amelia Earhart documents, the Russia hoax, of course, the weaponization hoax, and very soon, files related to alien extraterrestrial life, UAPs, and UFOs. Now, of course, a lot of people have their own opinions about it. I'm just looking forward to seeing what they have to say. All right. Now, we also have an update on what's going on with Tony Gonzales. Republicans in Congress are now starting to call for Tony Gonzales to resign. And that's largely because several of the messages between him and Regina Aviles, his now dead paramour, have been released to the public. We are going to take a look at several of them. In short, Tony Gonzales was pressuring Regina for naked pictures. He was grooming and gaslighting her. And twice, Regina also told him that he was going way too far. When you look at these messages, it appears as if Tony Gonzales was directly pressuring her, even when she didn't want to send him naked pictures. Lauren Boebert has called for his resignation. It looks like Una Panuna Banca has also called for his resignation. And we've also gotten a little bit more information on her alleged suicide itself. It would appear, according to police who arrived on the scene moments after she set herself on fire, she told the police that she did it because she had discovered that her now estranged husband was currently romantically involved with her best friend. Now, it is worth mentioning that she and her husband had been separated for about a year at this point. After he discovered the affair, he moved out, and it looks like he may have begun moving on with his life. So that does put a bit of a different spin on why she may have decided it was time to just go ahead and end things. But let's go ahead and take a look at some of these text messages. Tony Gonzales asked Regina to send him a sexy pic before attempting to discuss her preferred sexual positions. This was back in May of 2024. The messages between Gonzales and Aviles, who, of course, set herself on fire in the backyard of her home just 16 months later, were released by her now widower, Adrian Aviles, earlier today. So you can see here, he says, then send me a sexy pic. She replies and says, this is going too far, boss. So how long have you thought I was this hot? This is before they even started having an affair. It looks like Tony reached out to her and was directly pressuring her. Of course, he was married. He had several children. He knew she was married as well. And he replies and says, I'm just such a visual person. Wow, Tony Gonzales is a total creep. And then he asks her, what is your favorite position? And then she replies that she doesn't really want to send any pictures. I don't like taking pictures of myself. And then in another reply to Tony, she says, just a heads up, this is Adrian Aviles, Regina's soon-to-be ex-husband. I just wanted to inform all of you that we will end up getting divorced after my discovery of text messages and pictures that she has been having an affair on me with your boss, Tony Aviles, for some time now. Feel free to reach out if you want more of an explanation. It appears that Adrian sent a text message to multiple people, probably several of them from Tony Gonzales's office on his staff, and I would imagine Tony himself. And then Adrian offers up to talk about the situation, dish on this if they want to discuss it. Please tell me you didn't hire me because I was hot, she responded. Wow. What a piece of work. Well, we can now disclose that the National Republican Congressional Committee appears to be abandoning Tony Gonzales in the GOP primary for Texas 23. This is, of course, after they just dumped $450,000 on him in the last 4 weeks, but they have canceled all ad buys from here until the actual primary election. They are not going to be supporting Tony any longer going forward, and they're definitely not going to be supporting him in the primary against Brandon. And let's go Brandon Herrera. We can also disclose that in Texas 23, according to not only Brandon Herrera's internal polling, but also political intelligence and the Texas Tribune, Brandon Herrera currently sits at 45%. Remember, this is a primary election, so he's got to get at least 50 to avoid a runoff. He is just 5% away from that. Tony is only at 21%. So it appears that the majority of those supporting a single person in Texas 23 are actually supporting Brandon Herrera. So Tony should just drop out of the race. And in fact, Speaker Johnson has approached Tony and told him that he needs to address these allegations right now. Up until this point, Tony Gonzales has claimed that he has done nothing wrong. He never had an affair with that woman. Very Bill Clinton of him. And there are, again, several members of the female caucus in Congress that want Tony Gonzales to address this and just step down. All right. And let's go ahead and move on because I don't think Tony's going to be around much longer. All right. Now, you remember last week, Susan Rice essentially threatened corporate America and members of President Trump's administration last week when she said that there would be a reckoning when Democrats take control of the White House and the America once again in the near future. She basically said that if they work with Trump now, then they better get ready to be subpoenaed in the future. Well, President Trump has turned around and directed Netflix to remove Susan Rice from their board after she threatened retribution against his supporters. Netflix should fire racist, Trump-deranged Susan Rice immediately or pay the consequences. She's got no talent or skills, purely a political hack. Her power is gone and will never be back. How much is she being paid and for what? I think it's hilarious that Susan Rice threatened supporters of President Trump, directly telling corporate America that they should not be working with him in any respect. And then he turns around and directly uses corporate America to threaten Susan Rice and tells them to fire her. She's been on the board since 2023. I just think it would be hilarious if they actually did fire her. She probably deserves it. All right. Also, last week, if you were in the chat, told me that Howard Lutnick eats babies and that if I don't believe that, then they don't know what to tell me. I graciously suggested that they send me whatever evidence they have of Howard Lutnick eating babies, and I gave them my email. I have yet to hear anything. Something tells me I'm probably not going to hear anything because I don't believe that the evidence of Howard Lutnick eating babies actually exists. However, one fake news story that I can deliberately right now debunk for you is one that was going around this weekend. Now, after the news of the tariff decision with the Supreme Court came out, there were several big influencer accounts, quote unquote, on X that were passing around a story that Cantor Fitzgerald had been buying up insurance policies that were being sold off by providers who believed that they were going to be left holding the bag because companies were going to have to make claims based upon the decision of the Supreme Court for tariffs. Now, a lot of people just said Cantor Fitzgerald, which is being run by the son of Howard Lutnick, were playing the inside market, and they are standing to make a killing off of all of these tariff policies. And as such, it means that they had insider knowledge, and Howard Lutnick must resign. Well, it turns out it was totally fake. It's funny because I first heard about this because I went to lunch with my uncle on Saturday, and he was like asking me all of these questions. He like just started really diving into a lot of this stuff in the last 6 months, I guess. He's getting a divorce, and so he's got a lot of time on his hands to listen to things and start reading things. So ever since September, there's been an online betting market named Polymarket. And you guys probably heard about Polymarket. There's another one called Kalshi. They both do the exact same thing. They're not quite ready for use here in the United States yet. They're not exactly legal. You can probably use them if you use a VPN. But Polymarket has been offering traders the opportunity to make money on betting whether or not the U.S. Supreme Court was going to rule in favor or against the Trump tariffs. So millions of people were placing bets on either outcome. Of course, we got the decision on Friday, 6-3, betting against tariffs in the respect that President Trump and the administration could not use IEPA. We've talked about that. I talked about it yesterday with BB. Go check out that episode of The Narrative if you want to see me talking about that more. So they also had a parallel market betting on whether or not the court would force Trump to refund tariffs. There was another one asking whether or not the Supreme Court would rule on Trump tariffs in a certain way. There's all of these specific questions that you could bet on. And then, again, Kalshi was doing the exact same thing. They had the same trades that you could make. So you would read this mainstream media and the social media politicized echo chamber stories, and you might not realize that both Polymarket and Kalshi, which have been in place for a very long time, have kind of opened up ordinary Americans to bet on things that you never really had a chance to bet on before. They're letting their clients bet millions of dollars on whether or not President Trump would get struck down in court. That is the basic part of the story. But instead, you were getting headlines about Cantor Fitzgerald, which is, of course, an investment bank that was Howard Lutnick's family company, and it's now overseen by his sons because he walked away from it. And the story that was being told was that Cantor Fitzgerald was actually the one that was doing it. You can see here from Disclose.tv, Howard Lutnick's sons, Brandon and Kyle, now running Cantor Fitzgerald after Lutnick became Commerce Secretary, have been buying up rights to Trump-era tariff refunds at steep discounts, reportedly 20 to 30 cents on the dollar. It was a story from Wired. And the story from Wired, of course, comes from a magazine that is not exactly honest, all right? I mean, Wired, I used to read Wired when I was much, much younger. It was cool reading about technology, but now they're just like every other fake news outlet out here. Another one, DD Geopolitics. Lutnick swindles America again. The Supreme Court just ruled Trump's tariffs illegal. Well, guess who's about to make a fortune off of it? Cantor Fitzgerald. The firm now run by Lutnick's sons has been buying up the rights to blah, 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 blah. Anyways, this is not true. Cantor Fitzgerald was not buying up the rights to these tariffs, but it started with a report from Wired back in July, and it alleged that the financial services company Cantor Fitzgerald was creating a litigation finance product that brokers bets that the courts will strike down the tariffs. Here is the content from Wired. Trump's Commerce Secretary loves tariffs. His former investment bank is taking bets against them. A subsidiary of Cantor Fitzgerald, which is run by the sons of U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, is letting clients essentially bet that President Trump's tariffs will get struck down in court. In a letter seen by Wired, a representative from Cantor said the firm was willing to trade tariff refund rights for 20 to 30 cents, 20 to 30% of what companies have paid in duties. So for a company that paid $10 million, they would expect to receive $2 to $3 million in a trade, the representative wrote. We have the capacity to trade up to several hundred million of these presently and can likely upsize that in the future to meet potential demand. So in theory, these trades would connect a company, might be vulnerable to U.S. tariffs, with a fund that would be willing to bet that such tariffs might be reversed, or provide a market for two funds who disagreed on what the outcome of the Supreme Court decision would be. Cantor, like Polymarket or Kalshi, would then be the market where these trades would take place. So, always eager to stir up a scandal, especially when there is none. Congress's two most vocal anti-capitalists, that would be Elizabeth Warren and Ron Wyden, immediately sent a letter to Howard Lutnick's son, Brandon, who, again, is running Cantor Fitzgerald. They demanded a full disclosure of transactions or agreements that the firm might have made relating to these products that would let institutions effectively bet on the legality of President Trump's tariffs. Public reporting indicates that Cantor has offered companies the opportunity to trade their legal claim to a future tariff refund in exchange for 20 to 30% of the duties the company paid, the letter said. In this scenario, if the courts determine the tariffs are illegal, the company stands to recover hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, among the questions the senators posed were how many tariff refund agreements Cantor has finalized, whether it created them at the request of a specific client, and if anyone at the firm had communicated with people in the U.S. government about the tariffs or related legal cases, including Trump and the Commerce Secretary. Well, sadly for Elizabeth Warren, this fishing expedition went nowhere fast because, as was already reported by Bloomberg in August, while Cantor Fitzgerald held internal discussions about facilitating trades like this, unlike Kalshi and Polymarket, who actually went ahead with these trades, they quickly shut down the idea before they executed any of these transactions. In the Bloomberg report, which came after the Wired report, Cantor received what's known as a reverse inquiry. It's like a client asking the firm if they can facilitate a trade like what we just described, which are done by larger Wall Street banks. Some staff discussed which potential clients may be interested in arranging the idea before they just ended up rejecting it altogether. So Cantor takes no directional position on broker trades. They only pocket a commission when it matches a buyer and a seller, which of course is the exact business model of online better markets, which are now valued in the tens of billions of dollars. So they replied and they said, we have not facilitated or executed any trades in that market, and any suggestion that we have is absolutely false. So why then would Cantor decide against matching willing clients and actually creating a market where they don't actually hold a position? Well, the answer is pretty obvious. It's because Cantor founder Howard Lutnick is right now the Commerce Secretary for Donald Trump. He is part of the team that is shaping the president's policies and maybe even moving these markets in certain directions. So these particular dealings in a key area of focus, like the tariffs, might be looked at by ethics watchdogs, and then they might actually get in trouble. So that tells you everything you need to know. They maybe could have tried to bet on them, but it would have been totally unethical, and they didn't actually do it. All right, so there it goes. I just wanted to dispel that before people actually continue to run with that story, because I keep seeing people repeating things online without actually looking into them. Now, we are going to stick in the sphere of Jeffrey Epstein because we got word earlier today that Lord Peter Mandelson had been arrested. Lord Peter Mandelson, of course, was one of Jeffrey Epstein's confidants. He was the former ambassador to the United States. His homes were searched. It was announced that he was under investigation for giving confidential government information to Jeffrey Epstein, and it was quite many people had suggested that Mandelson would in fact be arrested. Well, the fallout is now here, and the arrest is so damning that it could actually lead to the utter destruction of Keir Starmer, the current Prime Minister of the UK. And, of course, the Prime Minister, if he ends up getting destroyed, he's going to walk away, and that's going to leave an opportunity for new elections. And Reform is currently gaining strength, but I think Restore Britain is actually the party that seems to have the better ideas when it comes to fixing the morass of problems that they have in the United Kingdom. So why would it affect Keir Starmer so badly? Well, Keir Starmer was responsible for placing Lord Peter Mandelson into that government. He also gave him the position in the United States, and he really ought to have known exactly what Peter Mandelson was up to. In fact, he did know about his association with Jeffrey Epstein, but he claims that Peter Mandelson lied about just how deep that association went. So the former Labour minister, Peter Mandelson, was pictured being led out of his London home by plainclothes police officers. Scotland Yard has been investigating allegations that he passed these sensitive government documents and market information to Jeffrey Epstein. This is while he was business secretary in another older administration. And we learned all about this from the Jeffrey Epstein files, which, of course, were released by President Trump's Department of Justice. So a spokesperson for Scotland Yard said officers have arrested a 72-year-old man on suspicion of misconduct in public office. I'd also like to remind you that this particular charge in the UK, misconduct in public office, is a crime which carries a sentence of life in prison. And since Peter Mandelson is 72 years old. I don't think it would be very difficult to see him spending the rest of his life in prison. He was arrested at an address in Camden on Monday, 23rd of February. He's been taken to a London police station for interview, and this comes after the police raided his homes in London and Wiltshire last week. There are also 2 addresses in Wiltshire and Camden that were being searched as well as part of this investigation. Now, I'd like to show you a very curious email from a assistant U.S. attorney at the Eastern District of New York. He is emailing someone. I'm assuming that it is someone who perhaps worked at the MDC in Brooklyn, which is the federal facility where Jeffrey Epstein was removed from this narrative. And the language that he uses is very curious. Take a listen to this. I'm an AUSA in the Eastern District of New York. I am working on an investigation into the death of an inmate at the Brooklyn MDC. The OCME told me that it signed a confidentiality agreement in connection with the investigation into the murder of Jeffrey Epstein. We were hoping to extend a similar agreement, and I wanted to see if you could share the agreement or a boilerplate version of it. I'm happy to speak over the phone if that's easier. My cell is redacted. Thanks so much, redacted. So a couple of different things here. First of all, in June of 2020, there was still an investigation into the death of Jeffrey Epstein. However, it had long since officially been ruled a suicide. And in no uncertain terms, this assistant U.S. attorney refers to it as the murder of Jeffrey Epstein, the murder of Jeffrey Epstein. So just confirmation once again that whomever's body was taken out of that facility, he was definitely killed by someone in that facility. There's really no other way to interpret that. But I'm very interested to know also what that non-disclosure agreement, that confidentiality agreement might have said. I mean, what was it exactly that they didn't want them to talk about? Perhaps the condition of the corpse, perhaps the fact that it appeared to be more like a murder scene than a suicide, perhaps the fact that it didn't really look like Jeffrey Epstein at all. It looked like maybe a body double of some type. Well, just adding a little bit more fire to that particular, a little more fuel to that particular fire. Take a look at this right here. This is from the medical examiner's report. This is the medical examiner who actually determined that Jeffrey Epstein did commit suicide. And just for the record, I don't believe that particular finding. But while he was examining Jeffrey Epstein's corpse, he was identifying the various parts of the body. And one of those parts of the body that you have to examine is the prostate of the man. So the bladder contained approximately 5 milliliters of cloudy yellow urine. The prostate is slightly and diffusely enlarged, with marked enlargement of the verumentanium. I don't know what that is. The testes are unremarkable. We also find that the endocrine system appears to be unremarkable. The digestive system contained brown fluid, without recognizable food or pills. The intestines are unremarkable. The musculoskeletal system, there was a rib that was slightly displaced, healed with a fracture callus. Every other bone was normal and unremarkable, and they took tissue and organ samples. Well, isn't that interesting? They found a prostate in the body of the man identified as Jeffrey Epstein. The only problem is we can go to this bit of information also from the Jeffrey Epstein files, and in a conversation he's having with a man named Richard, Richard says, you can have high testosterone and still have a need for Viagra because you don't have a prostate, right? Jeffrey says that's correct. Well, shit on a shingle. Jeffrey Epstein doesn't have a prostate. How in the hell does the body identified as Jeffrey Epstein have a prostate? We can also see Jeffrey Epstein's LabCorp test results here, where it says, according to the American Urological Association, serum PSA should decrease and remain at undetectable levels after radical prostatectomy. That's right. They're talking about his PSA levels, which are monitored. One of the reasons that people end up getting a prostate removal. So yes, all of these documents are available in the Epstein files. I mean, I can't think of any other greater piece of evidence to show that body was not Jeffrey Epstein. Everything that we have been tracking since the moment they showed that body being taken out of that MDC, I didn't believe that was Jeffrey Epstein. And now I know it wasn't Jeffrey Epstein because you don't regrow a prostate. Anybody out there, unfortunately, had to get their prostate removed? You can probably tell somebody next to you that your prostate doesn't regrow. All right. Once it's gone, and that's it. So whomever it was that was identified as Jeffrey Epstein that was murdered in the MDC, it wasn't Jeffrey Epstein. Gotta love it. Gotta love it. All right. Now, we also have some new information that just 5 days after Jeffrey Epstein's arrest in the summer of 2019, federal authorities went to the New York Police Department and told them to stand down on their investigations related to Jeffrey Epstein. These are also coming from new documents released by the Department of Justice. Now, the directive applied to NYPD's Special Victims Unit. This is the same unit that we went over emails discussing the trafficking ring down in Mexico that was related to the former U.S. ambassador to Mexico, the man who had allegedly impregnated an 11-year-old girl while he was abusing her. And also the essentially Demo Dick, the founding father of the Navy SEALs, was taking the punishment for him. So this directive went to the Special Victims Unit. This is the group that is specially trained and equipped to handle sex crimes and child abuse cases. At that time, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office had an ongoing investigation involving Jeffrey Epstein victims. But the FBI assumed that would come to a halt as well following the Bureau's directive. Now, this is just part of the chronology. We're actually going to go through this from 1996 to 2025. There's a timeline that amounts to the most comprehensive record to date of the publicly available information on New York law enforcement authorities' actions and inaction with regard to Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and a number of other co-conspirators. It's a very long record, and it shows institutional failures with a number of minor successes, including more recent pursuits with at least one of the alleged co-conspirators. We spoke about those three brothers, the Israeli brothers, that are currently on trial for federal sex trafficking in New York. This timeline is available at justsecurity.org. If you guys want to go check it out, this is a pretty good website. I follow them. All right. Now, what's also interesting is when we go back to the very first report of Jeffrey Epstein, August 29th, 1996, Maria Farmer reports Epstein and Maxwell to the NYPD. Maria Farmer, for years, was essentially ignored by the FBI. Her claims went nowhere. Louis Freeh was the director of the FBI at this time. And wouldn't you know it, after Louis Freeh left the FBI, Jeffrey Epstein actually hired him to dig up dirt on many of the girls who were making claims against him. That's right. Louis Freeh left public service and went to privately essentially work for Jeffrey Epstein. But it just goes to show you how many years ago someone with credible information had made claims against Jeffrey Epstein. Now, on August 29th of 1996, the day before my birthday, Maria Farmer reported Epstein and Maxwell to law enforcement. Initially, Maria reported Epstein's crimes to the New York Police Department's 6th Precinct. Maria disclosed to the NYPD that Epstein and Maxwell had sexually abused her and that Epstein and Maxwell, together with others, co-conspirators, were committing multiple ongoing illegal sex abuse crimes, including crimes against minors and vulnerable young children. That included child pornography, possible crimes against her minor siblings. Her sister, Annie Farmer, was also abused. Now, Maria Farmer ended up suing the United States of America. It wasn't until 12 years later, in June of 2008, when Epstein pled guilty in Florida state court to that one count of state felony solicitation of prosecution and one count of procurement of a minor to engage in prostitution. And then from 2008 to 2018, there was no movement on these cases. Epstein and his co-conspirators were simply free to go about their business for the next 10 years. But New York law enforcement authorities should have been alerted to explosive revelations of a wider criminal conspiracy, including the role of Ghislaine Maxwell. It was in the news, but of course, all of that had been shut down by Alex Acosta, who was told by the CIA, essentially, that Jeffrey Epstein belonged to intelligence. In January of 2011, the Office of Manhattan DA Cyrus Vance attempts to downgrade Epstein's sex offender status to low risk. The judge told the DA, Cyrus Vance, I have to tell you, I'm a little overwhelmed because I have never seen the prosecutor's office doing anything like this. So while he had briefly been incarcerated in Florida, Epstein returned to his homes, which included his home in New York. The state Supreme Court Justice Ruth Pickles was shocked by the DA's request to reduce Epstein's sex offender status in New York to the lowest possible level. The New York Times reported that that low-level classification would have limited the personal information available to the public, basically would have kept Jeffrey Epstein from being forced to list his name on the sex offender registry for life. It's also particularly surprising because the State Board of Examiners of Sex Offenders had already recommended for Jeffrey Epstein that he be at the highest classification. That would be level 3. Now, following Justice Pickles' rebuke, Cy Vance submitted a brief in August asking the appellate court to uphold Justice Pickles' level 3 determination. Vance's communications director, Danny Frost, would later issue a statement saying DA Vance was not made aware that the Manhattan DA's office even had this Sex Offender Registration Act matter or any matter involving Jeffrey Epstein until well after the hearing occurred, and only when the office corrected its legal error on appeal. Isn't that interesting? Well, it sounds like he got called out, and he was forced to do what he should have done the entire time. On May 7th and May 8th of 2012, Epstein and one of his victim assistants discussed the NYPD contacting her. That was in the emails. December 6th of 2018, the FBI opens up the case on Epstein along with the SDNY. They were also aided by the NYPD's Special Victims Unit and the FBI's Child Exploitation Human Trafficking Task Force. Around July of 2019, the NYPD actually traveled to New Mexico to interview an Epstein survivor. On July 6th of 2019, that's when Jeffrey Epstein was arrested from this multi-agency investigation. On July 10th or 11th of 2019, there was that stand-down order that I started with, which directed New York's law enforcement authorities to stop investigating Jeffrey Epstein. And then possibly around October of 2019, the DANY again begins looking into the sexual assault allegations against Leon Black. Leon Black is the reprehensible founder of Apollo Global Wealth Management, who apparently is a bit of a sadist and enjoyed physically harming the little girls that he was sexually abusing, being provided to him by Jeffrey Epstein. So the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, I guess they were investigating Leon Black for those particularly heinous crimes. In August of 2019, the NYPD received brand new tips and allegations in the Epstein case. January 28th and 29th of 2020, the FBI and federal agents discussed that stand-down directive. July 2nd of 2020, Ghislaine Maxwell is arrested from another joint agency investigation. November 9th of 2020, the NYPD gets more tips and allegations about Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. February 25th to March 10th of 2021, there was no follow-up by the NYPD with an Epstein victim. She reached out. She talked to a detective, but the detective never called her back. And they basically just left that hanging. October 29th of 2021, again, the DANY investigation of those sexual assault allegations against Leon Black. The ADA, that name is redacted, and I are from the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, and we are investigating allegations of sexual abuse against Leon Black. Of course, those have gone nowhere since then. January of 2022, they are still investigating those sexual abuse allegations against Leon Black. August 10th of 2022, a Jane Doe speaks with the Special Victims Unit, Sex Crimes Unit, apparently about Jess Staley, the former Chase banker and Deutsche Bank banker who had been Jeffrey Epstein's personal banker. February of 2023, new cooperating witness in the Leon Black sexual assault investigation. We have a new cooperating witness who's come forward and alleged sexual abuse by Leon Black. This witness was trafficked by Epstein and Maxwell, and we are wondering whether redacted name has come across your desk during your investigation. They were contacting the Southern District of New York. From June 2nd to 28th of 2023, more details of their investigation into Leon Black and Jess Staley begin to pop up. Spoke with DANY in January of 2023. They were considering a civil lawsuit or being involved in the Epstein Compensation Fund, but they wanted DANY to look at the allegations against Black. Guess what? They've been doing that for years. And no doubt her allegations, they do not doubt the allegations of the witness against Staley, Jeffrey Epstein, and Leon Black. They heard that she was abused by Staley, but they were unable to find any independent corroboration, as oftentimes is the case with sexual abuse. You're going to have to get both the victim and the perpetrator to admit that they did that, and that generally doesn't happen. June 9th of 2023, they reported a possible limitations of the DANY Black investigation and how it was probably unlikely they were going to be able to bring charges. This is the victim DANY called about a few months ago. They're looking into one incident of sexual assault in NYC in 2001 by Black, and any other conduct or targets would be outside the contours of their investigation. They find her credible in part of the similarity of her sexual assault and another individual's. They're trying to see if any of the information is specific conduct that could have been known to the victim. Charges seem unlikely, but they are still investigating. June of 2023, SDNY and DANY begin to have seemingly a conflict over a potential minor victim. In June 30th of 2023, the SDNY emails to share information with DANY about another victim who was identified with additional potential traffickers in the case, meaning that, once again, co-conspirators. That was an email that we read previously. Also, July 17th of 2024, DANY's Leon Black investigation is now described in the past tense, meaning that, unfortunately, they were no longer moving forward with it. March 11th of 2025, Jess Staley admitted before a court in the UK to having sexual intercourse with Jeffrey Epstein's assistant. And in July of 2025, a joint FBI NYPD PowerPoint presentation was released showing that Jess Staley and Les Wexner have been referred to state. And here we are. Les Wexner just finally testified, and we've already gone over some of that. I wonder if they're going to invite Louis Freeh in to testify. I think that would be a very interesting deposition. I think that Jess Staley, even though he's not an American citizen, actually, you know what? I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. I was thinking that he was a British citizen, but I need to just verify. I believe he is. No, he is an American banker. And it looks like he's still at Barclays. Interesting. I wasn't aware of that. Yeah, okay, I apologize for the fake news. He was actually born in America. All right, now, we also learned perhaps one of the reasons why so much information appeared to be missing from Jeffrey Epstein's residences. Well, in any event, the residences that they actually did go in and check. It appears that Epstein had a network of storage units that he was renting across the United States. This would likely be the location of where he held the various blackmail materials that he was known to be holding on to. All right. Before we get into that, I do have one more brief message from our friends over here on a Rumble, and let me just get that pulled up. All right, you guys. Have you ever wondered what it feels like to shoot with the same type of precision tech that's used by special forces? Well, if that's the case, I got some good news for you, because after years of research and development, MCG Tactical just dropped something incredible. It's called the Stinger Combat Sight. This isn't your average red dot sight. It actually uses holographic technology. At one time, that was just reserved for elite military and law enforcement. The Stinger delivers crystal clear precision. It's so accurate, you could hit a dime at 300 yards without even trying. This is exactly the same level of technology that's used by the pros, but there is a twist, because most sights like this are going to go for about $600 or more, and people happily pay it. But right now, through an exclusive deal with MCG Tactical, you can get this mil-spec sight for under $200. And it gets better. For my listeners, you're also going to get 67% off, and they're even going to cover the shipping. So you can scan the QR code that you see on screen, or you can go directly to mcgtac.com/redpill to get yours today. There is a limited supply, and people are buying them pretty quickly. So if you want to get a sight that's built for the best, this is an opportunity to do it and get a great price at the same time. Grab yours before they have to shut down orders. You'll also be able to go to the link in the description below. Like I said, on Friday, they are sending me one, so I can't wait to test it out and go to the range. We'll take some video, and we'll let you guys know how that works out. Looking forward to it. Thank you once again to MCG Tactical. All right, so getting back to Jeffrey Epstein's hidden storage units and the evidence of his crimes that was kept inside them. So we've obviously known for a long time, Jeffrey Epstein was a king of blackmail. He kept a treasure trove of information, probably audio, definitely video, definitely pictures, his friends and clients, or the people that he was targeting. But we now have this new report coming from The Telegraph, which is, of course, a British newspaper, and they reveal that he had secretly squirreled away computers, photographs, and all kinds of other equipment in storage units that were scattered across the United States. Now, this is a DOJ archive image, which was part of the DOJ release. You can see that he's got these boxes. This is all photographs. I would imagine there's probably DVDs and CDs with pictures in there as well. You got some innocuous stuff, art and furniture purchases, office supplies. But there you have photos of Jeffrey Epstein, and then also Selena photos. Now, it was said by the DOJ that there were definitely images of Jeffrey Epstein and child sexual abuse material, allegedly him molesting children. They claimed that there wasn't pictures of other people molesting children in those files. But let's war game this out for a second. If there truly wasn't at the locations that they were aware of, then it stands to reason that Jeffrey Epstein kept that blackmail material off-site so that somebody couldn't just show up at his house, get him in trouble for having those materials there, or perhaps show up and steal the material from his home. It does make a lot of sense that he would keep the blackmail stuff, the really high-value stuff, in an off-site location that nobody was aware of. It's also been said that he hired private detectives to not only disguise the locations of where this blackmail material was kept, but he would have them go to these storage units and then move it from one storage unit to another. So it was never in one place for very long. And then, of course, after he learned that one of his assistants was contacted by the SDNY and the FBI, he began to get even more paranoid, and he began to move it around even more. Now, we know from numerous people that Jeffrey Epstein's properties were completely wired for hidden cameras. We've seen some of those videos, nothing salacious, just simply a hidden camera, spy camera, which appeared to be placed inside a Kleenex box in an area of Jeffrey's Palm Beach home, which allowed him to have meetings with people and clandestinely photograph them. He also had a pretty sophisticated security room, and you can see here, you know, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, I got 5 monitors in front of me right now. Jeffrey Epstein has what appears to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 monitors right here. So either he is watching 7 individual feeds or he's watching a lot more than that, because each one of these monitors could theoretically be broken into 8 individual camera feeds. And depending on the software that you're using for the security cameras, probably had a mouse to be able to interact with it. And you would be able to go to click on one of those camera feeds. It would make it large, and then you could get a much bigger image of what you were looking at. But financial records and emails are how we have learned that Jeffrey Epstein was renting these storage lockers. They've identified at least 6 of them across the United States of America. And the records go back to 2003, and it appears that they were paid for until 2019. This is where it gets particularly interesting. Did Jeffrey Epstein have his security team or his private detective, private dicks, we'll say, did he have them move these blackmail materials out of these storage units before he was extricated? Or did he officially die and then all of his storage units maybe went into non-payment, and perhaps they ended up in like a storage wars type situation where somebody goes and buys one of these storage units and then they find like, oh my God, they have all of these, all of this material, which is like rich and famous people at Jeffrey Epstein's homes engaging in criminal activity. I mean, if that would have happened, I would imagine that person probably would have contacted authorities. But if Jeffrey Epstein is still alive, as I think many of us believe, it is entirely possible that he got out of the MDC and then immediately set about the process of transferring all of this blackmail material out of these 6 storage units. But these units were used to house not only these images and videos and computers, but some other personal items, as storage units usually are. You can see here, it looks like he's got a fake diploma in his drawer. These famous DVDs and CDs that we've seen, clearly pictures that he wanted to keep for one reason or another. Some of them had women or girls' names on them, others just his. But the search warrants, which showed up in the recent drop of 3 million plus documents that the DOJ put out, also revealed that U.S. authorities possibly never raided these storage spaces. And if they are still there, if they're still being paid for, then they could potentially contain all of this blackmail material that I think pretty much all of us understand that Jeffrey Epstein possessed at one time or another. So he would have these private detectives take materials from his homes to the storage facilities, and that would be to ensure that the police, when they showed up, would never find these things at his home. His staff also discussed transporting some computers and CDs from his private island to the units and then wiping them. Some of the material in the units could predate the earliest material in the Epstein files released by the DOJ. Undoubtedly, Jeffrey Epstein didn't just start doing this in 1996. I mean, he was probably doing it as far back as the late 70s or early 80s, because that's when he was operating and he was being inducted into this sort of spy versus spy world. Now, I had also suggested on a number of occasions that Jean-Luc Brunel was likely preparing to testify against Jeffrey Epstein, which makes his mysterious Arkanside in prison in exactly the same way that Jeffrey Epstein was Arkansided, much more understandable. And we know that at least one point in the past, Jean-Luc Brunel was already speaking with assistant U.S. attorneys and was planning to make a deal to transfer over videos and pictures of Jeffrey Epstein molesting minors. He got cold feet. Looks like Epstein got to him first and paid him many, many millions of dollars to ensure that he never did that. But once he was arrested, after Jeffrey Epstein was arrested, Jean-Luc Brunel had no reason not to testify, just to get it all over with. So it does appear, in fact, that Brunel was about to flip on Jeffrey Epstein. Now, Virginia Giuffre had testified that Jean-Luc Brunel was particularly sadistic, that he brutally raped her repeatedly, both in New York and on Epstein Island, on Little St. James. He was another of Epstein's powerful friends who had many contacts with young girls throughout the world. Jean-Luc Brunel ran MC2 modeling in Europe, in France, and he was the conduit to bring Eastern European girls from Europe to Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein had the plane, he had the visa scheme set up, and these girls, of course, would have their passports taken, and then they were under the control of Jeffrey from that point forward. In fact, his only similarity with Epstein and the only link to their friendship appeared to be that Brunel could get dozens of underage girls and feed Epstein's and Maxwell's strong appetite for sex with minors. Additionally, she said, Jeffrey Epstein has told me that he has slept with over 1,000 of Brunel's girls, and everything that I have seen confirms this claim. In her memoir, which came out shortly after her alleged suicide, she said, I'll never forget how Epstein and Brunel looked at one another as they abused girls side by side. They were truly gloating, taking a mutual malignant pleasure in our misfortune. So the DOJ releasing these files show that, yes, in fact, Brunel was planning to testify. And I think that by the time he was arrested, there was no reason that he had not to just go ahead and lay everything that he had on the table. Just like Jeffrey Epstein, he was looking at spending the rest of his life in prison. And there was essentially no one out there who was planning on turning on Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, this was a tight-knit group of very, very disturbed and sick individuals. So this is just referring to those various posts that we went over last week discussing Jean-Luc Brunel's attempt to hand that information over. I just thought it was particularly relevant considering the passages from Virginia Giuffre. Jean-Luc Brunel was not some innocent guy who got caught up in Jeffrey Epstein's web. Jean-Luc Brunel was just as bad, if not worse, than Jeffrey Epstein. Because if it wasn't for Jean-Luc Brunel, Jeffrey Epstein wouldn't have had access to all of these girls. And I think Brunel knew that. I think Jeffrey knew that. And I think that Brunel, given the opportunity, would have probably tried to testify to something like suggesting that Epstein had manipulated him. He had no idea that Epstein was using these girls for whatever purpose he was, or that Jean-Luc Brunel just feared for his life. And so he's now looking to do the right thing. But of course, he would probably be asking for a much lesser sentence than what he would have been given ultimately. But right there, that's the first time I've ever seen a number put on the number of girls that were trafficked through Jean-Luc Brunel's modeling agency. At least 1,000 girls. Absolutely horrible. How many of those girls are still alive? I mean, we don't have anywhere near 1,000 Epstein victims who have come forward. I don't think we have even in the hundreds. I mean, yeah, just terrible, terrible stuff to imagine that happening. Filter Dog over on Pilled says, the New York Times just published an article titled, The Epstein Files Should Never Have Been Released. You got to be shitting me. That's funny. Judah the Lady Pug, thank you for the cookie. No thanks, Joe. Thank you, buddy. He says, hey, Lisa and Zach, hope you both had a great weekend together, and I once again look forward to all the new info that will be either introduced and confirmed by your reporting of it. Bless you both. Stay safe. You stay safe as well, my brother. Appreciate you. Yeah, I think you're right, D. Patriot. I think a lot of those girls are probably dead. And if they're not dead, they may be, well, I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, it's easier to kill somebody than it is to keep them alive and have to care for them for the rest of their lives. And if you have abused them in such a heinous and disgusting way, I think these people tie up loose ends. I absolutely think these people tie up loose ends. Did you all see the video of the person that called Ghislaine respond to be called by name outside a restaurant? Oh, Proteus. I saw that video. Yeah. So this guy walked by this woman and asked her if she was like a dead ringer for Ghislaine Maxwell, but she spoke with an American accent. She had blonde hair. She also was a little bit, had harsher features than Ghislaine Maxwell. It really did look like her. I should probably find that. I saw it and just kind of looked at it in passing because I didn't believe it was Ghislaine. Oh. Mea culpa? All right, Sarah, I'll take a look at that in a little bit. Okay. Ghislaine Maxwell sighting. Let's see if that pulls it up. No. All right, so, take a look at Ghislaine Maxwell a couple of years ago. Here she is at In-N-Out. This is before she was arrested. A lot of the pictures you see of her, she's younger. Her skin's in better condition. She doesn't have as many wrinkles. You can see her. You can see here, even at this time, the years are starting to wear on her. Her features are changing. She's getting older. She's not nearly the young ingenue that she was when she and Jeffrey Epstein met. Shucks. Well. If anyone can find that video and you want to like drop it into the chat, Lisa, go ahead and let them do that. Here she is looking directly at the camera. This was right after Jeffrey Epstein died. I remember showing these years ago. That's so funny. Here she is. Okay. So this is the woman who looks like Ghislaine Maxwell. And then this is Ghislaine Maxwell right here. This woman is several years younger than Ghislaine Maxwell. Her teeth are also slightly different, but she really does look a lot like Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, I can see here somebody's doing a facial comparison to see if that's her. But her eyebrows are not quite the same. Obviously, eyebrows can be plucked. Maybe I will copy. I'll take this picture here, and I'll see about opening it in Photoshop, and I'll do a comparison of their faces. But hang on, I'm trying to see. I want to find the video itself. Somebody's got to have the video of Ghislaine Maxwell. Let me see. They don't link to it in this post. Let me see. All right. Thank you, Alias. You, sir, are a scholar and a gentleman. So the picture of Ghislaine, the picture of this video of this woman, that is not AI. It is an actual video. But I will tell you that and I didn't even talk about it because of it. But you guys remember when Ghislaine gave her deposition and everybody was sharing that picture and saying, that's not Ghislaine Maxwell. Who showed up for the deposition? They were right. That wasn't Ghislaine Maxwell. It was an AI upscaled image taken from a still of a grainy jailhouse camera and then pushed through an algorithm, which then added a bunch of information to Ghislaine's face. I might as well show you. Ghislaine deposition. I probably should have talked about this at the time. Okay, so here, you can see here. This is Ghislaine Maxwell. Obviously, it's blown up. It's a little bit blurry. This is the image that people were sharing. And they pointed to her nose and her facial features, and they were like, that's not Ghislaine Maxwell. So the resolution of the video from the deposition was not very good. It was pretty far zoomed out. And what they had to do to get that picture was to zoom in on Ghislaine and then upscale it with AI. So the image that people were showing was not like an actual image from the video. It had information that had been added to it. So this is definitely one of those instances where AI was involved, and anytime AI is involved, it's going to add detail that isn't there in the original picture. Same thing that was done with Tyler, what's his name, after Charlie Kirk. People were sharing an image that they said was Tyler, and they were like, oh, well, the guy that the FBI said was the shooter, and they were like, this isn't the same guy. Well, the image that was being shared wasn't the same guy. It had been pushed through an AI upscaler. Okay, this is in Quebec, Canada, I guess.
Guylaine? Do I know you? You know Guylaine?
No, sorry.
No? Oh, I used to order hella pizza off of her.
Oh, really?
She always delivered, yeah.
Oh, sounds nice.
So, yeah. I don't think that she responded to the name Ghislaine. I think it was obvious that the guy was talking to her, and he also had a camera in her face. So she was like, excuse me? Anyways, yeah, I don't think that's Ghislaine Maxwell. I don't think that's Ghislaine Maxwell. All right. Anyways, we're going to transition from Jeffrey Epstein now. Thank you to Trump 1, who says, hey, Zach, good to see you. Good to see you as well. Appreciate that. Let's talk about Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, because another thing that happened over the weekend was yet another indoctrinated left-wing brainworms sufferer attempted to enter Mar-a-Lago with the intention, allegedly, apparently, to try to kill President Trump or to engage in some type of other radical violent behavior. It was a 21-year-old man, kind of spindly, and apparently he's known for drawing pictures of golf courses. Looks like he might have been a twin, and his brother went into the military. I don't think we really know much about this guy's life yet, but he entered Mar-a-Lago with a gas can and a 12-gauge shotgun. They asked the Canuck, the video, the link is in the chat. Just scroll up. There's like 6 of them. People dropped them. It's right there. So this guy enters Mar-a-Lago, and the Secret Service tell him to put his gun down, put the gas can down. He puts the gas can down. He raises the shotgun. They neutralized him. All right. So, I mean, people, I don't know if they're confused about how this could happen. I don't know how you could not be confused about how this could happen. I mean, we've had numerous attempts on the life of President Trump, going all the way back to 2016, before he was even elected president. There was a kid who rushed the stage with a handgun, and very quickly the Secret Service were able to get him out of there. President Trump was also not at Mar-a-Lago. And I guess that Scott Bessent spoke with President Trump shortly after this attempt took place. But let's just hear from Scott Bessent, because he's got a fairly scathing rebuke. I think that this may. Well, I don't want to listen to this, and well, maybe we should. Scott Bessent is just gold.
With us this morning. And Mr. Secretary, thank you for joining us. We had planned to have you on this program to discuss tariffs, but let me first begin with your reaction. Do you know if President Trump was in Washington at 1:30 a.m. last night?
Good morning, Maria, and good to be with you. I just spoke with President Trump. He spent the night in D.C. He was here for the National Governors Conference, gave a great speech to the governors last night. And, you know, Maria, I just want to say, why don't we look back here and think two would-be assassins dead, one in jail for life, and you know, this venom coming from the other side. Look at this terrible, profane Senate commercial in Illinois. I would call for them to take that down. Take that down, because it is that kind of venom that, you know, we don't know whether this person was a mastermind, unhinged, or what, but they are normalizing this violence. It's got to stop. I want to congratulate Sean Curran and the Secret Service for protecting the president and his family.
And how is it possible that this individual could have gotten as close as he did to Mar-a-Lago last night?
Yeah, this is the part that really bothers me, because allegedly, from what I've heard, there was another visitor at Mar-a-Lago that was leaving through the automatic gate, And this guy got in somehow while the gate was open. Now, I had originally heard that he just like snuck in, like walked in with the shotgun and the gas can. But somebody had said this morning that he drove in. I don't know that that would have been possible for you to get your car in before that gate had stopped. I mean, unless he didn't care about hitting the gate. But then, of course, that would have blown up his entire spot. Obviously, this kid was deluded. He was suffering from brain worms, some form of TDS. Obviously, he maybe wasn't thinking clearly. But I think that ultimately the problem here is that there's been this culture created on the left where the idea of martyring yourself for the privilege of killing President Trump is something that you're going to be venerated for. And you've seen it. I've showed videos all the time, people on TikTok saying, everybody will have your back. Just go out there and do it. This kid didn't look like he had a very stimulating social life. He didn't seem like he probably had a girlfriend. He just seemed like somebody who probably was perpetually online. He was 21 years old. He's probably living on Reddit, that sort of thing. And I'll be interested to see what they can dig up from his social media or his communications on his personal devices after this. But this is the question. I mean, how is it, given how many assassination attempts this president has had over the years, that anybody is able to get close to him? I mean, from what I understand, they have a lot of various security measures at Mar-a-Lago, just like they have at the White House. They've got cameras. They probably have proximity alerts. Maybe they got a proximity alert, and that's why they were able to intercept him so quickly. But I would love it if we never see an incident like this ever happen again. I mean, I don't think anybody wants to worry about President Trump being assassinated. I don't want to worry about any president being assassinated. I mean, I love President Trump, but I don't want to see it ever happen. It's unforgivable and completely something that should not be possible given our modern technology. And also, it shouldn't be physically possible from the sense that there have been so many attempts that have come so far. There should be enough people surrounding any of President Trump's possible locations to ensure that this would never, ever take place. Now, maybe it's because he wasn't even at Mar-a-Lago. Maybe it's because he was in Washington, D.C. All of the heavy hitters were with him in Washington, D.C. Who knows? But let's continue.
Yeah, for anyone who's driven along there, the perimeter is very, very.
No. I mean, I haven't heard that, Finn. I haven't heard anything about it yet. That's the thing. I don't know if he had social media. I haven't seen anything released in regards to this. I mean, basically everything I've told you is everything that I have seen related to this kid.
Protected, so we'll see. I don't know whether did he come along the beach? Did he? I don't know, but I can tell you the Secret Service is running so much better now than it was in Butler. New leadership and President Trump and his family, they're safe, but they shouldn't have.
Okay, D Patriot says I heard his socials were scrubbed. It's entirely possible that he scrubbed his socials before he went and did something like this. And I mean, just to stymie the investigation or to maybe confuse things. But, there's also the possibility that as soon as his identity was released, the social media companies went and shut everything down. Now, just so you guys are aware, obviously this is nothing new. We've seen this time and time again. Somebody does something terrible, social media companies immediately remove people from their profiles. They're trying to reduce their own liability. They don't want to draw attention to crazy people. Just because they've been deleted doesn't mean that the data is not still presentable to authorities. If they did that, then that would be a major problem, and I think they would be answering for it.
Have to endure attempt after attempt.
And Secretary, will there be any further changes in terms of the president's security, the security at Mar-a-Lago post this incident?
Yeah, Maria, I'm not going to discuss that on TV, but
Okay.
you know, I think the perimeter around the president is as strong as it's ever been. But again, you know, this exists.
So Isle of Wight privilege says reeks of complicity. You know, I might be more likely to say that if President Trump was there. I mean, if somebody had gotten close again, I think I would be a lot more likely to suggest that was happening. I mean, in a perfect world, nobody ever gets through, but in the real world, things happen. What we need to know is more detailed information about this kid, what his connections were, what the network was, who he was talking to, exactly why he did it, because nothing occurs in a vacuum. And yeah, and so I think we need more information. But I would be right there with you if he had gotten close again. Like you take a look at Ryan Routh. 100%, bro. 100%. That guy had information from the inside. And also Butler. I mean, there was clearly stuff going on within the security apparatus that allowed that to take place.
Potential threat, this venom from the left really has to stop. They've normalized this violence.
Yeah, Secretary, I want to get your take on the impact of the Supreme Court's decision. While much of the discussion over the Supreme Court's decision to rule against the president's emergency tariffs, or some of the tariffs, it's been focused on the impact on foreign allies and the president's power. But I want to. It's worth noting that this ruling will also have a profound impact on America's fiscal position.
All right, so this is important because the prevailing story related to tariffs is that it's somehow going to stymie the Trump administration's new paradigm that they were implementing as a result of these tariffs. Scott Bessent wants you to know that that's not the case. This, of course, changes the implementation of those tariffs, might even change what they're called on paper. But ultimately, what we've been doing throughout the first 14 months of this administration is going to continue as we move forward. Nothing is changing. Agreements are not changing unless, of course, we're going to be charging them more money. So no money is going to be paid back. The United States is not going to be on the hook to give refunds. We are ensuring economic and trade parity with nations that have, for decades, been taking advantage of the United States and, quite frankly, our moronic leadership.
Committee for a Responsible Budget, President Maya McGuinness told me that the Supreme Court ruling will cut government revenue by $1.9 trillion through fiscal 2036. It will increase debt by $2.4 trillion over the same period. Debt could now rise to 125% of GDP, with deficits rising to more than 7% of GDP.
Of course, now, what Maria is presenting would be the case if the tariffs that were attributed to IEPA were not allowed to continue in any form, and if there was a forced return of funds that had already been given. That is not going to happen. So worst case scenario, don't even worry about it. It's not the way it's happening.
It's worth noting this SCOTUS impact on U.S. debt. Do you believe that the president's actions to come up with tariffs under a different authority will, in fact, replace all of the revenue lost from this ruling?
Yeah, so Maria, let's take a step back here. And Maya McGuinness should be ashamed, and they should take the word responsible out of her organization's name.
That was the organization that put the information together that Maria just presented. So yeah, again, Scott is like, back up, bitch. This is not taking place.
She told you was completely irresponsible. And look, where were they when the Biden administration blew out the deficit, that we had a fiscal contraction last year? So she should be ashamed. So let me tell you what's going to happen. First, this ruling was a very narrow ruling in terms of the president's ability to use IEPA to collect revenues. The Supreme Court said the president can put in a full embargo, but he cannot collect $1. So the president still has the most draconian measure for negotiations, and that under Sections 232, Sections 301, we're already collecting substantial tariff revenue. The IEEPA tariffs are going to be replaced in 3 days with the Section 122, and I can tell you at Treasury, contrary to what the Committee for an Irresponsible Budget, or whatever it's called, says, tariff revenue will be unchanged this year and will be unchanged in the future.
All right. Now, like I told you last week, I truly do believe that the structure of the tariff mandate from President Trump was done in such a way with the belief that what we're seeing right now, this decision from the Supreme Court, might have been the likely outcome, because IEEPA had never been used for tariffs previously. The language was such that a legal argument could be made, and that's what the Trump administration did. They said, based upon the law passed by Congress, we're going to use IEEPA to charge tariffs, probably well aware that there was going to be a legal challenge to it. Then at the same time, Howard Lutnick, again, in my opinion, somebody who's a superstar of the administration, began the process of reviewing what would happen if we did tariffs under these other mandates, like what Zak Paine just said, 232, I think another one's 130. There's like 3 different versions of them. And if at that time it had been announced that the United States was planning to do tariffs only after the review had been completed, that would have given all of these nations essentially nearly a year to be able to play financial games with the United States. They could have begun charging us substantial tariffs before they were forced to give us money. They could have put all sorts of economic and trade pressure on us in a number of different ways. Likely, all of these wars across the world would not have ended as a result of President Trump's diplomacy, and perhaps the Board of Peace might not even have been created. And through that pressure, as they got closer to the implementation of tariffs after the review, they could have said, well, guess what? We've made the lives of Americans miserable for nearly a year. We can stop all that right now. All you have to do is just not go through with your plan to charge us tariffs. And the United States would be in a very, very different position. Instead, we made all these deals with all these countries around the world. Zak Paine, Howard Lutnick, President Trump, all there for it. And they are now going to be forced to stick to their deals because that 270-day waiting period is over. The legality of these other tariff tools that we discussed last week is already established because they've already been challenged in court, and they have history and tradition, and the implementation of them has been seen before. So, as Zak Paine just said, the tariffs merely will be replaced with the other tools in the toolbox. IEEPA will no longer be considered tariffs, but as President Trump has said, he has the power to implement licenses. He has the power to implement embargoes. There are a whole bunch of other financial and trade tools that come along with IEEPA that were established by the court with this most recent decision. So whether or not the SCOTUSes intended to do what they did, they handed President Trump a major win. And this is perfectly in line with my estimation of President Trump's staggering deal-making prowess. I mean, this guy really is playing 5D chess, and the movements and actions that he takes seem to be fairly well calculated. I think that they had the last 4 years during the shadow administration to figure out exactly how things were going to play out here in Trump 2.0, and I think they've done an incredibly great job. Opteasy says, Tony Rodham Clinton, I bet, had a prostate. He probably did. I still don't think that body is Tony Clinton, though.
Yeah, no, I mean, just to be clear, she's saying the fact that
Tony Rodham,
the SCOTUS ruled against the president's emergency tariffs will be problematic for the U.S.'s fiscal policy.
Again, that is wrong.
Okay.
Treasury projections show 2026 revenues.
Hey, Sean Anon, thanks for the raid over on Pill, bro.
Are from tariffs unchanged, and all the out years unchanged. What is going to happen, the president announced on Friday and then amended over the weekend, 15% global tariff using a very
15%, which is up from the 10% that it was before. So we're actually going to be taking in more money than we were under the previous 10% universal tariff.
Robust authority from 1974. Those will be layered on with Section 232, Section 301, and the 122s. They run for 150 days, and during that time, Commerce USTR will be doing studies, and the studies will likely lead to increased tariff revenues. We've been in contact with our foreign trading partners, and they like the tariff deals. Yeah. So, you know, they're not going to be changed. And the president remains undeterred in his determination to lower our trade deficit and bring manufacturing back to the U.S.
Now, Secretary, what about the...
And that's the other thing. If President Trump had not put the pressure on those nations with the immediate implementation of those tariffs, they would have had no reason to come back to the United States and begin the process of setting up the manufacturing powerhouse that we once were. All of the infrastructure to create that opportunity here in the United States needed to be rebuilt. If they were going to be using existing facilities, they would have to be all types of refurbishment and perhaps a retrofitting of old equipment. It's a process that takes time. And the only reason they would ever have to come back to the United States and invest all of that money is if they wanted to avoid having to pay tariffs in the near future. Now, of course, until they get that into place, they are still going to have to pay tariffs. There's money coming in, and the prosperity just continues to roll, and it snowballs.
The potential for refunds from the 2025 tariff revenue that you were able to raise, that in and of itself cut into the deficit, and you've talked about that a lot. What can you tell us about how that money will have to be repaid, or
It won't. I'll tell you right now.
Is it going to overlap with this new revenue that you will be raising as a result of the 15% tariffs?
Yeah, so Maria, I can't tell you anything because on Friday, the Supreme Court did not address that. They remanded it back to the lower court, and I imagine that we will be hearing from them in weeks or months to come, and then we will follow their instructions.
Okay, so do you expect this to be in the courts? I mean, you've got some corporations saying, I expect a refund at this point.
Well, again, this is a court decision. Supreme Court made one decision. The lower court's going to make another. That it's out of our hands since it's in the court, and we will follow the court's orders.
All right. So I'm predicting right now there will be no refunds. President Trump is going to likely have a conversation with any companies that are saying that they want to have a refund. You know, it all started, this challenge to IEEPA started because of a toy corporation. I believe that they're based in Illinois, which is probably why you had J.B. Pritzker out there crowing about it over the weekend. And they brought in all kinds of cheap junk from China. That's what they sold, essentially. And so they may be the only ones who are seeking to get a refund, but I don't see it as happening. All right, now let's move on to California. We got to talk about the fraud for just a moment. But before we do, I do have one more final sponsorship from our friends over here on Rumble, and it's a product that they just recently sent me. I just switched to the Proper toothbrush. It's one of those things that makes sense once you actually hear about it and understand what it is. I want you to just picture this for me for a second. Think about the toothbrush you guys are using right now. It's probably packed with the same thing as every other toothbrush. These abrasive plastic or nylon bristles. And ask yourself, would you ever wash your car with hard nylon bristle brushes? Probably not, because you're going to take the finish off. You destroy the paint. So then the question is, why on earth are we doing that to our teeth and gums twice a day? We're essentially grinding down the enamel on our teeth. You're also probably wrecking your gums with this outdated tech. But Proper did away with the sandpaper approach. Instead of nylon, they're using engineered TPE scrubbers. These are things that actually flex and give under pressure. They don't just poke around at the plaque. They actually scrub it away with a smooth, controlled motion that's gentle on your mouth. It's about working smarter, not working harder. Now, on top of the tech, there is this principle. Proper is 100% made right here in the USA. There's no cheap overseas imports. You don't have a giant faceless corporation cutting corners to try and save a nickel. It's a solid build for people who value quality and American manufacturing. So if you're tired of the big corporate way of doing things and you want a toothbrush that actually protects your health and cleans your teeth, hit the link below and check out Proper Dental. If you use the code RUMBLE15 at checkout, you're also going to save 15% off your first order, once again, with Proper Dental. You can use that QR code on screen, or you can go ahead and click the link that you're going to find in the chat over here on Rumble. And thank you very much to Proper Dental, and thank you for sending that over to me. I really do appreciate it. All right, so California, as we have suspected for many, many years and has been confirmed not that long ago, has a major, major problem with fraud. Huge state, lots of people, many, many, many illegal aliens, and of course, they also need money because they spend it like it's going out of style. They tax their people so high, and President Trump is addressing that by sending out a federal strike team. They're going to be heading to California, as we have determined that California's unemployment insurance program is likely mired in a swamp of fraud and improper payments. If you'll remember, going back a couple of years, we learned that there were people in California or people making claims in California for unemployment when they were actually from other nations around the world, or some of them were even in prison, and they were having unemployment checks sent to their prison commissary accounts. So Secretary of Labor Lori Chavez-DeRemer put out a press release from the Department of Labor, and she said financial issues and potential fraud in California's unemployment insurance program are now, for the first time, going to be fully examined. The previous administration turned a blind eye toward failing labor programs, but this ends now. Immediately, we are engaging a specialized strike team to uncover any possible potential fraud or abuse and quickly move to protect the American worker and the taxpayer. I look forward to restoring the California uninsurance program's integrity and financial health. So California's Employment Development Department has previously been cited by the Department of Labor for poor performance, and California has also dipped into the Uninsurance Employment Trust Fund. That fund holds state-collected payroll taxes to pay the state portion of unemployment benefits. But they borrowed $21 billion from the federal government to keep that system afloat, which is triggering increased unemployment insurance taxes for state workers. The state auditor of California ruled the agency overseeing unemployment insurance payments was a high-risk agency, and there was a recent audit that said that the EDD's fraud prevention approach during the pandemic that I mentioned previously was marked by significant missteps and inaction that led to billions of dollars in unemployment benefit payments that EDD later determined was likely fraudulent. Further, we've also reported that EDD has been unable to accurately quantify the amount of their inappropriate unemployment insurance payments. So they're a high-risk agency because of their mismanagement of the UI program. Specifically, EDD is unable to reliably estimate improper payments under the unemployment insurance program, thus adversely affecting the state's financial statements, as well as impairing efforts to independently evaluate the efficacy of EDD's own fraud prevention activities. This is all directly from the state auditor. The report said substantial fraud risk exists in the EDD UI program. As an example, the program could not block addresses that were used to file unusually high numbers of claims, and they removed a safeguard preventing payment to individuals who had unconfirmed identities, which means that you could basically just make somebody up, go into the system, file a claim, and then have your payments start to go out. Have you guys, anybody in the chat here, ever had to file for unemployment in your home state before? I remember back in Michigan several years ago, I had to file unemployment, And, it only lasts for so long. It's not a ton of money. It's basically there as a stopgap until you can find more work. And then as soon as you find more work, you let them know the payments stop. Now, your unemployment insurance taxes come out of your salary once you get another job. And you basically pay for yourself to have a part in this program in case the worst happens. But apparently in California, none of that, the safeguarding was in place, and you could just basically make something up and then start getting paid for it. So as a result, the report said the department allowed the payments of potentially fraudulent claims estimated at tens of billions of dollars, most of which has yet to be recovered. Think about how many of those payments were likely going to, scammers in Africa, Nigeria, etc. California received about $290 billion in COVID relief money, and the Inspector General, Anthony D'Esposito, said nationally he nearly expects $1 billion in taxpayer funds are at risk due to COVID-related unemployment insurance fraud, and that prepaid debit cards issued to be used for pandemic-era unemployment insurance benefits had $720 million in unspent funds in them. That's just money that is out there in the ether. My office has warned that absent swift action, U.S. taxpayers risk losing nearly $1 billion in fraudulently obtained benefits. It's taxpayer money, and it demands immediate attention. Now, considering that this money is out there on government-issued prepaid debit cards, I would think it would be easy for them to just claw it back and have it deposited into the National Unemployment Insurance Fund. But I don't know. I'm not a professional in this area. But if that money's just sitting out there, then we need to get it back. And every single person that filed claims fraudulently needs to be investigated and charged. Now, what's particularly interesting about the use of a strike team, we've talked about strike teams before. It brings together individuals from a number of different agencies who otherwise would be working independently. So it's an interdisciplinary, interagency investigative team, which essentially is sent out to a place like California. They do a deep dive on whatever it is that they're looking to wrap up, and then it is specifically used to file charges and put people in prison. I would have to believe that due to the level of just inaccuracy and incompetence and outright fraud in California, there are probably more than a few people working for the state of California in the unemployment insurance area that are likely involved with helping these fraudulent claims get made, and they probably got kickbacks. As we've seen in a number of other California jurisdictions, there have also been people working directly for municipalities like the LA County or the city of LA, who were filing their own unemployment insurance claims even while they were working for the city or the county. So this strike team is undoubtedly going to lead to probably quite a few arrests and hopefully clawing back some of that money. Emerald Dragon says, greetings from Snowmageddon 2026. I'm still plowing and we are nowhere near done. Hooray. Yeah, I heard that the snow had become wet and icy. So hopefully everybody's okay if you're in the midst of the snowstorm. All right, another fraud. This time it's a U.S. airman. This is absolutely, of course, unacceptable. Staff Sergeant Richard Stefan Ramroop. He is a U.S. Air Force Staff Sergeant, and his husband have been federally indicted. Prosecutors say they orchestrated a scheme that went on for years. They siphoned off millions of dollars in taxpayer-funded government resources so they could bankroll their lavish luxury lifestyle, complete with high-end vehicles and a 7-figure home in Arizona. According to the federal grand jury indictment, Staff Sergeant Richard Stefan Ramroop, 35, and his spouse, Manuel George Madrid, 32, are facing a 12-count indictment. That includes conspiracy to commit theft of government property, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, and money laundering. So authorities say that these guys used Ramroop's position inside the pharmacy at the Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Tucson. They would fraudulently purchase thousands of medical devices using government funds from 2022 to 2025. Instead of going towards mission-critical defense needs, prosecutors say the equipment was diverted and resold for their personal profit. The illicit proceeds would then be funneled into accounts that were controlled by these guys. In total, they controlled somewhere over $11 million through these wire transfers and other deposits from the reselling of this diverted equipment. The government itself was left with more than $3 million in losses. They say the money was then used to curate their luxurious lifestyle. You know, gay guys have great taste, so they were out there spending that money. $1 million mansion in Tucson's upscale mountain neighborhood. They also had a 2024 Porsche Cayenne. That cost about $141,000. They had a 2024 BMW i7. That is just about $195,000. Ooh, a 2025 Ford F-150 Raptor between $80,000 and $110,000. A 2025 Mini Cooper S convertible somewhere between $35,000 and $40,000. A 2025 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon between $55,000 and $65,000. And a BMW Alpina XB7 between $150,000 and $165,000. But wait, there's more. They also got themselves a 2026 Cadillac Escalade Sport Platinum between $120,000 and $130,000. And you might ask yourselves, how many cars do these guys need? Well, they only needed 2 probably at the end of the day, but they just couldn't help themselves. They thought they were going to get away with it. Look at this. His and hers, you might say, the Porsche and the BMW. The defendants allegedly stole millions in taxpayer dollars from the Department of War to bankroll their lavish lifestyle, diverting critical resources away from their intended purpose, the U.S. attorney said. Every dollar taken through fraud is a dollar denied to the mission it was meant to support. The U.S. Attorney's Office and our federal local law enforcement partners will hold accountable any individual who profits illegally at the expense of the American people. Military service members hold a unique position in our society where they are entrusted with large amounts of taxpayer dollars to ensure the defense of our nation. This is a quote from the IRS CI Phoenix Field Office Acting Special Agent in Charge, Jerome Gregory. When a service member abuses their position for personal gain, it erodes trust in the tax system and harms the very citizens they have sworn an oath to protect. IRS criminal investigation will continue to investigate allegations of theft of taxpayer funds and government property, ensuring the integrity of our nation's tax system. This indictment reflects the outcome of a coordinated effort between AFOSI and our federal counterparts. That is Special Agent Richard Kautz, AFOSI Detachment 217 Commander. Fraud of this level is not just a financial crime. It undermines public trust, diverts resources, and threatens the integrity of our force. Every dollar lost to fraud is a dollar taken away from the security of our nation. Well, I'm pretty disgusted by this, but I'm altogether not too surprised. Will this be a military trial? That's a great question, Timotheus. These are the U.S. attorneys from the federal district court that are commenting here. I think it would make sense if it was a military trial. I mean, certainly these guys should be court-martialed. I wonder if they would. Well, this has got to be a civilian trial because the crimes that they listed are federal statutes. It's not the UCMJ. So perhaps there will be UCMJ action as well as federal action. I would imagine they deserve both. Certainly the civilian, the husband, he would be charged in the federal court, and perhaps the airman would be charged under the UCMJ. They deserve everything they get, though. All right. Now, we also have an update on Russiagate. You may or may not know that Russiagate has just quietly made its way to the U.S. Supreme Court. You probably remember Carter Page. Carter Page was one of the first people to get wrapped up in the Russiagate scandal. And he has claimed that the feds violated his constitutional rights. Why is that? Well, they submitted false and misleading information so they could secure a FISA warrant against him. Litigation brought by Carter Page has quietly reached the Supreme Court, giving the 9 justices a chance to weigh in on this investigation that has become a fixture of the American landscape for the last several years. Abuses of this type going back to Obama, and then, of course, they continued under Biden, even continued during President Trump's first administration. Now, Carter Page, if you don't know, was an energy consultant. He briefly served as a foreign policy advisor to President Trump's 2016 campaign, and he became the subject of an FBI counterintelligence investigation into alleged Russian election interference. That was Crossfire Hurricane. Well, 5 years ago in 2020, Carter Page filed a federal lawsuit seeking damages from then FBI Director James Comey and other former officials, including former Deputy Director Andrew McCabe and former Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. He alleged they violated his rights by submitting false or misleading information to secure that FISA warrant against him, and that he was wrongfully surveilled as part of a politically motivated investigation. All of that is true. Page sought hundreds of millions of dollars in damages, arguing the surveillance severely harmed his reputation and his career. I believe it did. Federal courts ultimately dismissed Page's lawsuit, while the Justice Department acknowledged they made serious mistakes in the FISA process related to Page. The courts concluded that those errors did not entitle him to monetary damages from the particular named officials. Well, the petition was filed with the Supreme Court on December 11th of last year after the Court of Appeals of D.C. affirmed the dismissal of Page's lawsuit. The Supreme Court is currently considering whether or not they're even going to hear the case, Carter versus Comey, in the 2025-26 term. As of now, they haven't made a decision, and the government has successfully asked for permission to delay its response until mid-March. The lawyers for Carter Page argued that this case is important to civil liberties, and the justices should allow victims of false FISA warrants to sue public officials, federal officials. I think they should. The Federal Bureau of Investigation obtained 4 warrants from the FISA court to surveil Carter Page, but its applications contained multiple errors, omissions, and misstatements the FBI later concluded vitiated its showing of probable cause. Worse, it was later revealed that 2 agents leaked information about the FBI surveillance to the press, which resulted in an April 2017 article in the Washington Post. They tried to crucify Carter Page publicly and tie him to Russia so they could then tie Russia to President Trump. I think Carter Page deserves to be made whole. All right. Now, also in relation to the long-running scandal to try to destroy President Trump, Judge Eileen Cannon has just permanently blocked the release of Jack Smith's final report, and she also lambasted Smith in her decision. So this was released earlier today. Jack Smith had hoped to release his final report on the so-called classified documents case against President Trump. And she said that Jack Smith compiled the Trump report after she had dismissed the case, which is not at all proper. Special Counsel Smith and his team went ahead for months, undeterred, preparing the classified documents report using discovery collected in connection with that proceeding and expending government funds in the process. They had no right or mandate to do that after the case had been dismissed. To say this chronology represents at a minimum a concerning breach of the spirit of the dismissal order is an understatement, if not an outright violation of it. While it is true that former special counsels have released final reports at the conclusion of their work, it appears that they have done so either after electing not to bring charges at all or after adjudications of guilt by plea or trial. The court strains to find a situation in which a former special counsel has released a report after initiating criminal charges that did not result in a finding of guilt. So, she is essentially saying that to release this report in its current form would represent a manifest injustice, not only to President Trump, but also, of course, to the co-defendants who were named in this classified document case. Special Counsel Smith, acting without lawful authority, obtained an indictment in this action and initiated proceedings that resulted in a final order of dismissal of all charges. So the Justice Department is now blocked from releasing, distributing, conveying, or sharing with anyone outside the Department of Justice any information or conclusion in Volume 2 or in any of the drafts thereof. There was apparently a version of this that was slated to be released tomorrow. So she got in just under the wire. Now, she had previously blocked the Justice Department from sharing Jack Smith's classified documents report with Congress. And Judge Cannon, during a hearing, appeared to be skeptical of the plan Merrick Garland had. He wanted to give the Volume 2 final report on these so-called classified documents to Congress, and she repeatedly asked DOJ lawyers at that time what they needed to show these documents to lawmakers. What was the purpose of this? And she also asked if the final report was safeguarded from being leaked to the public. And of course, they can't say that. This is ultimately, I think, their intention was to have it leaked to the public, and they wanted it to leak to the public before the election in 2024. Why is there such urgency to disclose this to Congress right now, prior to the conclusion of the criminal proceeding, she asked, which would seem to be the ordinary course. At the end of the day, what's the upside of doing this right now? And the truth of the matter was they couldn't answer it, because the only upside for them was that they might have another opportunity to try to smear President Trump in public. All right. Now, we have yet another a follow-up on AOC's gaffes, which came in from her appearance at the Munich Security Conference. Now, I showed maybe one clip of AOC stumbling over her words, finding difficulty answering fairly boilerplate questions about U.S. foreign policy while sitting on stage at the Munich Security Conference. It was quite obvious that she's not ready for prime time. She'll never be an adequate candidate for president. She may be a candidate, but she'll never be president, and she would never be able to govern effectively, because AOC, at the end of the day, is a bartender. She's not particularly intelligent. She's definitely not read in on many of the subjects that you would need to be read in on if you were going to lead the strongest and largest nation in the free world. Now, a lot of people raked her over the coals and made fun of her pretty severely on X and in many other venues. So she actually responded, and she put out a video where she's quite literally on the verge of tears. And what's even funnier about it is that as she's making this video, it must have been super late. She probably was a little bit wine drunk while she's making this video, because her boyfriend is in the background snoring, and you can hear him. And I think the ultimate message here is that even he doesn't want to hear AOC's mouth at the end of the day. Let's take a listen. Because there's just a little bit of schadenfreude when you hear AOC starting to cry because she realizes how stupid she sounded.
If you think that I don't understand foreign policy because out of hours of discourse about international affairs, I pause to think about one of the most sensitive geopolitical issues that currently exist on Earth, I'm afraid the issue's not my understanding, but rather the problem is perhaps you've gotten adjusted to a president that never thinks before he speaks and doesn't care about the implications of his words before he speaks on matters like these. And in fact, if you actually look at what Trump said about this issue himself, he actually had the same, if not a worse, answer. So ask yourself, why do you think the issues turn to that? And I'm going to tell you, it's because, frankly, there are very few people who are actually willing to challenge the foreign policy establishment that continues to send people to war and bankrupt our country for the rich.
There are very few people who are willing to stand up to the foreign policy establishment, to the military-industrial complex. But I'll tell you who did. President Trump. President Trump not only ended all of these conflicts, he reduced the budget at the Pentagon And he has set up a constant yearly reduction of the budget at the Pentagon going forward. Now, it would have been something else entirely, AOC, if you could have adequately answered any of the questions that you were asked while you were on stage. And it's not anybody else's fault that you sounded like a high school kid. You sounded like a high school kid who was out of her depth. That's not President Trump's fault. And President Trump's answers on foreign policy, even though he may deliver messages simplistically, he does that intentionally so that every single person listening to him can easily and succinctly understand the underlying message. Where you differed from President Trump is that you had no underlying message. There was nothing that you said which held any sort of substance to it. I mean, there's just no other way to put it. So I thought it only pertinent to follow up with John Kennedy's assessment of AOC's performance at the Munich Security Conference, because he is, of course, hilarious. Thank you to Northern Pike, who says, AOC, Newsom, Harris, and Biden are all sounding very similar. It's like a strange movie.
Well, it's not all crickets. Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez went to Munich this week and made some comments about foreign policy. Look, I don't hate anybody, and I certainly don't hate the Congresswoman. But how can I put this? The Congresswoman is kind of like Vice President Kamala Harris, but with more bartending experience. She has never been accused of being a policy maven. You put her in a presidential primary with Elizabeth Warren or Rahm Emanuel, they will devour her like a light snack. I probably shouldn't say this, but she can get me back. Somebody told me a joke today. They said Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez announced today categorically that she is not a moron. And she went on to say she hasn't even been to Utah, much less embraced their religion. Now, she can get me back. I don't dislike the Congresswoman, but our plan for dealing with her, as I've said before, has always been Operation Let Her Speak. And so far it's working, and my message to my friend the Congresswoman is, you go, girl. You just keep it up.
Oh, keep it up, AOC. Keep it up, because you are doing a much better job than anyone else. Gavin Newsom seems to be another one of those people who has a distinct habit of putting his foot in his own mouth. He was in Atlanta over the week, and he was speaking to a predominantly black audience. And I will never understand why Democrats seem to think that the best way to pander to black voters is to insult their intelligence, because that's what they seem to do over and over and over again. Remember, poor kids are just as smart as white kids. Or every single time a Democrat tells you that black people are too incompetent to get themselves an ID, everybody's got a freaking ID. So here, Gavin Newsom tells this black audience that he's just like them. He didn't get a good score on his SAT, and he also doesn't know how to read good. I feel like it's so insulting. Oh my God. Okay, almost there. One moment.
I'm not trying to impress you. I'm just trying to impress upon you. I'm like you. I'm no better than you. I'm a 960 SAT guy. And I'm not trying to offend anyone, trying to act all there if you got 940. But literally a 960 SAT guy. I cannot, you've never seen me read a speech, because I cannot read a speech. Maybe the wrong business to be in.
I bet you there's a lot of people there who could read a speech. Anyways, a lot of people pounced on these comments because, I mean, it's pandering in exactly the wrong way. Assuming, and this is what Democrats do all the time, they assume that their black audience has a lower level of intelligence than they do, and that as such, they can talk to them in a certain way and reach out and make a connection by talking about how unintelligent they are. Now, there may be something to that, because for you to think that that's a good thing, you must be lacking in the IQ department. There's just no other way to put it. Now, again, just like AOC, people were just torching Gavin Newsom online. This mostly was shared around by, I think, oh gosh, what was the account? I don't know. Some autist account. And the tagline was, I'm a 960 AT guy. I can't read. Like, he's telling black people, I can't read either. I also didn't do well on SATs. How do you know what SAT score any of these people got? How do you know that many of these people didn't get better SAT scores? I mean, maybe they don't even know what the SAT is because they didn't go to college. Who knows? But you shouldn't be assuming anything like that about your audience. I don't care what group of people you're talking to. So this was for a book tour. That's why he was doing this. The book is called Young Man in a Hurry, A Memoir of Discovery. And he began in Nashville, ended up here in Atlanta. And people savaged him. People said Gavin Newsom thinks a 960 SAT makes him look like black Americans. Let that sink in. And Gavin Newsom replied and said, you didn't give a shit about the president of the United States posting an ape video of President Obama or calling African nations shitholes, but you're going to call me racist for talking about my lifelong struggle with dyslexia. Spare me your effing outrage, Sean. And then it ends right there. Okay, so obviously the whole Obama monkey video, it wasn't exclusively a video of the Obamas as monkeys. It was a play on the Lion King. I mean, everybody in politics was featured as an animal from the Lion King. Just so happened whoever made the video made the monkeys Obamas. Somebody's got to be the monkeys. I mean, that's it. But Gavin Newsom definitely made a mistake there. Now, this might be in retaliation for people calling him out, but the White House and DHS has highlighted what Gavin Newsom just did shortly after making these comments. He pardoned an illegal alien that was convicted of attempted murder. Now, you might say, well, of course he did. Well, because this illegal alien had been convicted of attempted murder, his name is Samboon Faymani. He had a green card. Now, he lost that green card after his conviction, and this was an assault with a firearm. This guy shouldn't have had a gun to begin with. And because of that conviction, he was placed into removal proceedings, and a immigration judge gave him a final order of removal. He was on his way out of the country. But Gavin Newsom decided to pardon him, which then removes that attempted murder conviction, and it is no longer a qualifying reason for him to be removed from the United States. So this gives this guy his green card back, and then essentially allows him to just go back out into the fabric of society. So if anything further occurs as a result of this now convicted attempted murderer, if anything occurs with him attacking another American citizen or committing another crime, it is solely on the shoulders of Gavin Newsom. And a lot of people are taking note. Now, I hope that a lot of Californians who, perhaps have supported Gavin Newsom in the past are taking a look at this, because this is absolutely disgusting. Now, this kind of also comes into play because President Trump, what happened to... Okay, well, I had an article that I wanted to go over. President Trump did an event with angel parents over the weekend. The mother of Lake and Riley spoke, and the police officer who had months earlier arrested the killer of Lake and Riley in New York was also there to speak. And he arrested this guy in New York. He brought him in, and then because they're soft on crime, they let him go. And then months later, he recognized him when he saw that he had been arrested for the murder of Lake and Riley. And this guy was choking up. I mean, he was like, you know, I tried to stop this guy, and the people who hate you put him back out on the streets so that he can murder this beautiful young girl with a bright and promising future ahead of her. And he was like, we have to make sure that doesn't happen again. And it won't happen with President Trump in charge. But with somebody like Gavin Newsom, obviously, it will continue to happen. All right, before I tell you guys about this next story, let me say thank you very much to No Thanks Joe. Joe says, I think that besides suffering with TDS, these people are also plagued with John Wilkes Booth disorders. They are mentally ill. A hero. We can literally thank MSM as well as Propagators Online. God bless. God bless you as well. Trump One says, hey, Zach, good to see you. Good to see you as well. Thank you very, very much. All right. Now, we have this next story, and it has to do with Zoran Mamdani. He also got absolutely flamed over the weekend. Of course, Democrats, and Mamdani among them, are against the idea of having people show their ID when they vote. Because of this snowstorm that hit New York and many other places in the Northeast, the city of New York had presented a plan to allow private citizens to get paid to shovel or to plow snow, rather. But in order to plow the snow, you have to present two forms of identification, which literally means that in New York, it is harder to get hired to shovel snow than it is to cast a ballot in an election. And in a press conference where they were discussing their various efforts to temper the snowpocalypse, Mamdani was asked about this very thing. You can see here, to be eligible to shovel snow, you have to be at least 18 years of age. You have to be eligible to work in the United States. You got to be able to do physical labor. And to register, to even get considered, you have to present two small photos, like a passport photo, two original forms of ID, plus you got to bring copies. You also have to have a social security card. Isn't that interesting? So it is, again, harder to become a snowplow operator in the city of New York than it is to cast a ballot in an election. All you got to do is have the ballot and just send it in. They don't even bother to check who you are. So let's hear a reporter ask him about it.
There's been this controversy over the snow laborers and the sort of what some see as onerous need to have documentation. Can you just talk about if that's new and what you make of the controversy?
This is all long-standing. This is a long-standing program and long-standing requirements, and this is a way that New Yorkers get paid to shovel snow in assistance with the city's response to a winter storm event. Federal law requires that employers get authorization and documentation to pay people for their work. We are not allowed to just cut checks to individuals for their work. And these are the policies that we've had in place, but I understand that for many, it's the first time that they've ever heard about it.
Okay, so because it's been done like this before, you shouldn't even think about it. And just because there haven't been requests to show ID before doesn't mean that we shouldn't start doing it. I think we should have some parity with this. I mean, but what about the obvious issue here? I mean, isn't it racist to ask people to show their identification to get paid to do a job? I mean, if it's racist to ask people to show ID when they go and vote, it's racist to ask them to prove their identity when they go and get paid to shovel snow. I just don't understand how Mamdani doesn't see it. Well, of course, I understand. All right. Now, thank you very much to Sean Joe for a can, a cookie, a can, a cookie, and a cookie. Thank you to S123SKG for a can. And then thank you to Sean Joe for 3 more cookies. I appreciate it. All right. Now, Late last week, it was announced that John Ratcliffe's CIA was retracting a series of intelligence reports after it was determined that they were riddled with left-wing bias. So he ordered the withdrawal or major revision of these 19 intelligence assessments after they took a look through them and found that they definitely did not meet the current agency's standards for analytical rigor and political neutrality. They released these unredacted versions of 3 of the affected reports, all of which, when you read them, it's pretty obvious that they're majorly slanted to the left. The topics covered included LGBT activists in the Middle East, women and white violence extremism, and access to contraception during the COVID pandemic. Now, the reports spanned through multiple administrations. There was one that was produced under Obama, one actually produced under Trump's term, and then one that was produced under Biden. According to the agency, the reports, quote, fall short of the high standards of impartiality that CIA must uphold and do not reflect the expertise for which our analysts are renowned. There is absolutely no room for bias in our work, and when we identify instances where analytic rigor has been compromised, we have a responsibility to correct the record. These actions underscore our commitment to transparency, accountability, and objective intelligence analysis. These reports were identified during a much broader review that was conducted by the Intelligence Advisory Board. They examined hundreds of CIA analytic products from the last decade. There was an internal review that was led by Deputy Director Michael Ellis, and they reached the same conclusion. The move follows a number of earlier efforts that Ratcliffe had put in place to revisit past intelligence work that had clearly been tainted by political bias. Last July, there was a declassified CIA memo that criticized the analytic process behind the 2016 assessment that Russia had helped Donald Trump win the presidential election. Obviously, it was bullshit. They had to call it out. Senator Tom Cotton posted this. He said, I've been sending these kind of work reports back to the CIA for years and observing that they contain no intelligence. Our intelligence agencies have too often missed critical national security developments to waste time on, for instance, the pandemic-related contraceptive shortfalls that threaten economic development. Honestly, I can't believe that was even a report from the CIA. There was, I think Lauren Southern was actually in one of these reports. That was the one about white women and violent extremism. Hold on, let me show you this because it's pretty funny. Here it is. She said, I was barred from the U.S. when these documents were created, in which you imply I participated in terrorism for making YouTube videos and doing the OK hand signs. I was forced into dozens of hours of questioning sessions, drained psychologically and financially. Is there any info that can be declassified on the decision-making process here? So it's hilarious to me because the whole OK sign as like a white power symbol was a troll from 4chan, and it really took off. It's hilarious. So you can see here where they focus on Lauren, radicalization and disengagement pathways among female, white, racially and ethnically motivated violent extremists and sympathizers. You have different stages. First, becoming involved. During this entry phase, the movement appeals to an individual's unmet psychological needs for empowerment, enrichment, fulfillment, and certainty. Social networks typically facilitate entry into the group, according to academic and press reporting by some left-wing organization. Someone, probably a group in 2015, White Remove sympathizer Lauren Southern was struggling through college when she first published her viral video titled Why I'm Not a Feminist, and then later dropped out of school, according to a U.S. press report, suggesting her lack of academic success probably prompted a desire for purpose and certainty. We do not categorize Southern as White Remove, REMVE. That seems like a a category that they are assigning to people, but we don't have any definition for it. However, we assess that her espousal of narratives has contributed to the reach of some white remove ideologies. And here, Southern holds up the OK symbol, which some members of the movement have co-opted to mean white power, judging from a U.S. press report that was based on total fiction coming from 4chan. And then after you get involved, you are being involved. In this phase, an individual engages in extremist and terrorist activities, and personal motivations are subsumed by a sense of responsibility to the greater benefit of the group. Terrorist groups and extremist movements use a common ideological belief structure to maximize group unity and justify violence, according to academic and press reporting at, again, some unnamed left-wing organization. With each subsequent video, Southern gained popularity within the white remove movement. Southern asserted in a documentary that black South Africans were as responsible for apartheid as white South Africans were, according to another press report. And here they show a picture of her with something about Islam written on her face. As of December 2020, Southern's video streaming channel, which includes her anti-Muslim makeup tutorial, had more than 600,000 subscribers across the globe. And then finally, when the white women get so disenfranchised with the white supremacy terrorist movement, they leave the movement. This is the exit phase for a member of an extremist or terrorist group. During this phase, disillusionment with the group often motivates an individual to leave, and social contacts and the promise of a landing spot outside the group typically help facilitate a departure, according to academic reporting from some left-wing organization. In November of 2017, after enduring hostile criticism and unwanted sexual advances from men, it's not exactly how it went. I'm not going to get into Lauren's history, though. Southern posted a video defending herself for being 22 years old without being married or having children, according to a press report, highlighting how some women may become disillusioned after experiencing the violent misogyny that is pervasive throughout the white remove movement. As of October 2020, Southern was living in Australia with her husband when she posed for a profile on her life after she reportedly left the movement because of online harassment. As of January 2020, the videos she created remained available on her channel, and she stated that she did not feel responsible for the spread of extremist narratives, according to another gay-ass press report. So clearly, Lauren Southern's presence in this report is so twisted and violently slanted to the left. Lauren Southern was not a terrorist, okay? She was a YouTuber, and she was also a Canadian YouTuber. She was hauled into Congress. She was forced to testify. She was targeted by her government and our government. Absolutely insane. I'm just so glad that the CIA has officially done away with these various reports. All right, and thank you so much to Trisha Q Patriot Texas. Hey, Zach and Lisa, anyone going to DC on May 17th? It's a long drive for me, but a worthwhile cause. Always good to see you, Patriots, showing some love in the chat. Love you, Zach and Lisa. Have some fun with this. I really appreciate that. I am not planning to go to DC on May 17th. I actually don't know what's going on May 17th. I'll have to look into that. Northern Pike also says, isn't it the year of the horse, China, AOC? I bet Democrats had their money on that dumb mayor. They may have. All right, we're going to end with this, and we'll have to talk about the cartels tomorrow. We got new details in the killing of that Caltech scientist we briefly spoke about last week. The first bit of detail is that it's not like this guy lived in some suburban neighborhood. You can see here from the satellite view of his property, he was out in the middle of nowhere. So when he was murdered on his porch, this person had to specifically go miles out of their way to seek this man out on his property. And the person who killed him, again, was named Freddie Snyder. He's currently being held on $2 million bail. A new investigative report by the New York Post has revealed that Snyder was released from jail 2 months before the murder took place after a judge released him under California's unnecessary prosecution law. So he was picked up 2 days before Christmas for carrying a loaded firearm and an attempted jail escape, but was released on his own recognizance. The felony case was suddenly dismissed under Penal Code 1385, often referred to as PC 1385, a code ultimately decided by the judge. And you can see here, this is a very rural area. Like, the only reason you would come out here is if you had a specific intention. I said last week, I think that this scientist was murdered. I think that he was targeted for murder, because Grillmayer chose to live in a very remote location. There was complete darkness. He didn't have any light pollution. It made it easier for him to get astrological observations. We still don't know what the alleged motivation of Snyder was in killing him. We don't know how he got out there. We don't know anything other than this man was killed, and I think that it was a targeted hit. I think that's the only thing that we can gather from this whole thing. Oh, it's the National Day of Prayer in D.C. Okay, that makes sense. All right. Final thank you to Sean Joe for the cookie. Do appreciate it. And did my stream not start? Okay, it did work over on X. All right, I'll be live tonight at 10:30 on Badlands for Baseless Conspiracies. You can join me there, or you can come back tomorrow at 5 p.m. for another episode of Red Pill News Live. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you guys so much for your support. I would like to reiterate once again, if anyone here has signed up either through Locals or through my website for an ongoing yearly membership or monthly membership, please take a look at the email that you received when you signed up. There is contact information, and there is contact information for me in the description of every video. If you file a chargeback because you say that you reached out to me and you didn't, I will fight the chargeback. I will still refund your money, but I will fight the chargeback because I will be charged at minimum a $15 chargeback fee, whether I win the chargeback or not. It really hurts. It takes away somebody else's donation. I am just asking you to please just reach out to me, and I can take care of it very, very easily. Please think about that and just take that into account. All right, you guys. Also, you may be listening, and you may be the person who just filed a chargeback this weekend. Please respond to my email, and we'll take care of you. All right, you guys. Good luck. God bless. I will see you tomorrow.